Good afternoon. It's Thursday, the 15th of January. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Supreme Court President Asher Grunis ended his term today following 3 years of service. Ahead of a farewell ceremony held in his honor, attended by the country's senior judiciary, Grunis delivered his final verdict. The case related to whether Lebanese terrorist Mustafa Dirani, suspected of having taken Israeli navigator Ron Arad captive, has the right to sue the state for the alleged torture during his interrogation. Grunis ruled that during times of conflict, the court is not obligated to address any claims made by the enemy. Justice Miriam Naor will be sworn in as the next president of the Supreme Court later this evening. About 500,000 secondary school students across the country returned to their classrooms this morning following a one-day strike protesting the cancellation of field trips by the High School Teachers Association. The instructors had refused to accompany the students on class events outside educational facilities unless they were granted immunity from legal responsibility in case any of the students were injured. The National Student Council proclaimed victory and ended the strike after the Teachers Union and the Ministry of Education came to an agreement to reinstate the field trips in return for limited teacher liability over potential student injuries. Turning to the Knesset election and the results of the Beit Yehudi primary were announced this morning. Israel Beiteinu has rolled out the party's campaign slogan, and Moshe Kahlon is saying that he wants to be finance minister. Here with all the latest is IBA's political correspondent Eli Wogelenter.
For the second day in a row, the top spot elected in a party primary went to a woman. Yesterday's winner was Beit Yehudi faction chairwoman Ayelet Shaked, a day after Shali Yachimovich snagged the top spot in the Labor primary. Results from the Beit Yehudi vote were announced officially this morning, with Shaked garnering the most votes, followed by Deputy Religious Affairs Minister Eli Ben-Dahan, Knesset Finance Committee Chair Nissan Slomiansky, and MK Uri Orbach. The non-religious Shaked was a freshman politician in the last elections who led the party's drive to present a more secular and modern image. The top two seats were reserved for party leader and economy minister Naftali Bennett and Tkuma faction head Uri Ariel, who serves as housing and construction minister. Only a few seats in realistic spots were actually up for grabs, with the rest either reserved by the party leadership or slated for members of the Tkuma faction within the party, which held its primary earlier this week. Out of 77,000 registered members, 57% came out to vote. At a news conference this morning, Bennett expressed his pride and confidence in the diverse range of candidates elected to top spots in the party's list.
If anyone would have told me 2 years ago that number one elected would be Ayelet Shaked, a secular woman from Tel Aviv, I wouldn't have believed it. If someone would have told me that to the top of the list we'd get Rabbi Eli Ben-Dan, who was born in Morocco, grew up in Beersheba, became a field commander in the military, and spent his life taking care of the weakest people in our society and bringing the people of Israel to the Torah, to the Judaism, I wouldn't have believed it. But today we did make history. And let me be clear, the day is near that the Beit Yehudi party will lead the state of Israel. And that's because only the Beit Yehudi opposes a Palestinian state. Only the Beit Yehudi voted against letting free terrorists and murderers and pushed through a bill that will forbid that in the future. Only the Beit Yehudi party cares about creating a Jewish identity for the young people in Israel.
Another news conference was held this morning. Avigdor Lieberman presented the platform of his Yisrael Beiteinu party, as well as lashing out at the attacks being made against party members involved in the ongoing corruption investigation. Speaking at a news conference in Tel Aviv, the foreign minister addressed the media at a podium bearing the words, "Telling it like it is, Lieberman." The sub-slogan of the party, however, promotes land swap, Ariel to Israel, Al-Faham to Palestine, referring respectively to the settlement and the northern Israeli Arab city known for its Islamic fundamentalism. Lieberman asserted that the current conflict is not between Israel and the Palestinians, rather it is between Jews and Arabs. And he said that Israeli Arabs who are loyal can stay Israeli, but there is no reason for Hanin Zoabi, Ahmed Tibi, or the northern branch of the Islamic movement to remain Israeli citizens when a Palestinian state is formed. Lieberman also said he and the members of his party will no longer speak of the corruption investigation in which Deputy Minister Faina Kirshenbaum was implicated. As for the party list of candidates for Knesset, Lieberman said the party selection committee will finish putting together its list on Sunday, and the Central Committee will vote on it on Monday. Turning to the new Kulanu party, and party leader Moshe Kachlon laid out several policy positions for the first time yesterday, including his desire to be finance minister and a support for the state recognizing same-sex marriage. We are aiming for the finance ministry because that's where we can get things done, he said, listing reforms in housing, finance, and the cost of living. On diplomatic issues, he reiterated that Kulanu would be there to support an agreement with the Palestinians, but that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas was not, at the moment, a partner for peace because he was pursuing action against Israel at the International Criminal Court and the United Nations. Kachlon promised that his party would be in the next government, regardless of who wins the election, as long as the new prime minister is willing to work with Kulanu on housing and social issues. And Kachlon criticized Likud, his former party, saying, "I still feel like a Likudnik in the social sense, but the Likud has moved away to a different place. The genuine Likud is represented by me and the people around me. I decided to establish Kulanu against that backdrop. We are continuing the Likud of 1977. And finally, Labor has renamed itself after choosing a socioeconomic list in its primary. They have decided that the combined list would be called Hamachaneh Atzioni in Hebrew, which translates as the Zionist Camp. But no official English name has been decided upon as yet. Aaron?
Thanks for that report. In other news, rhetoric between Israeli and Turkish leaders is ratcheting up again. Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu today claimed that Prime Minister Netanyahu has perpetrated crimes against humanity comparable to those committed by the terrorists in Paris. His remarks follow previous comments from Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan that Israel should have been denied a presence at Sunday's anti-terrorism march in Paris because of this past summer's conflict with Gaza. For his part, Netanyahu lashed out last night against the world's silence over the statements from Erdogan.
And I've yet to hear any world leader condemn the comments by Erdogan. Not one. Now, he said that Israel should not have been represented in the march in Paris. And the reason he gave was our actions to defend our citizens against the thousands of rockets hurled at our cities by the terrorists of Hamas. I believe his shameful remarks must be repudiated by the international community.
During a meeting with Israeli ambassadors, Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman called Erdogan an anti-Semitic bully and accused Europe of being cowardly for not confronting him. He went on to say that silence from the civilized and politically correct Europe over Erdogan and his gang is reminiscent of the 1930s and that the truth must be clearly spoken. He added that the foundation of the current wave of murderous anti-Semitism is Islamist extremism on one hand and the unbridled and unfair lashing out against Israel on the other. Turning to France, where more information is being disclosed about the Paris attacks, Alexandra Jen joins me now with the latest.
The Charlie Hebdo frenzy continues with an overwhelming and still growing demand for the newest issue of the tabloid. We also have new photos and a fifth suspect in the kosher supermarket attack. French authorities are investigating a suspected accomplice of Amari Koulibaly. They believe the potential suspect drove the gunman to the kosher supermarket. Koulibaly rented a small house in Gentilly, a suburb in the south of France, 2 weeks ago. A special police unit raided the house and found a scooter indicating evidence of a fifth suspect. Inside the home, they also found an arsenal of weapons, but they have yet to release more details. New photos of Koulibaly and the victims in the kosher market have come out. Here, Koulibaly is in a bulletproof vest holding a gun. The hostages stand in the aisle. 2 are sprawled on the floor, unattended. Here are the victims hiding in the freezer, and then someone disables the security camera. The devastating attack has led to astounding sales for the newest issue of Charlie Hebdo. To meet demand, the paper has jumped from selling 60,000 copies to 3 million to 5 million. People lined up in the early hours of the morning to get their copy, actually cheering when the kiosk opened. Papers flew off the stand. In another part of France, a newspaper stand owner was in panic. She says she received only 30 copies after ordering 515. We have around 200 reservations. We can't deliver. We don't have enough. Not enough. We need some more. Demand was so high that sales took to eBay. One of the final bids sold for a whopping $117,000. Another in the U.S. sold for $20,000, while the paper itself only sold for $4. In Turkey, instead of a celebration, there was rioting. Islamists were enraged at a Turkish newspaper that published the cartoons found in Charlie Hebdo. They crowded the streets and set copies of the paper on fire. An unnamed protester said, "They insulted Muslims. These infidels working at this newspaper will pay for what they did today. If they won't be brought to account in this world, they will be in the other. Kawashi brothers are our honor." The Charlie Hebdo issue is being sold in 16 different languages. It will actually be available in stores right here in Israel. The local bookstore, Steinmetzky, has ordered copies, but supply worldwide is still far behind. Aaron.
Thanks, Alexandra. Well, although the evidence is overwhelming that the Islamist extremists carried out the attacks in Paris, many French Muslims say that the entire episode was a Jewish plot to embarrass Islam, as discovered by the Daily Beast news website.
I went out to what they call the suburbs of France, which are not what Americans think of as suburbs. They're really the housing projects. They're outside Paris. And there are a couple areas inside Paris where a lot of poor Muslims live. And I talked to a cross-section of mainly French-Algerian young men who said it was pretty much, they felt, the attacks were actually a conspiracy by the Jews to make Muslims look bad. And they told me that one person told me that, in fact, they weren't just regular Jews that were doing this. In fact, they were a race of magical Jews, shape-shifting Jews that were master manipulators and could be everywhere at the same time.
Thousands of birthright participants came together in Jerusalem last night to mark 15 years since the program was established to forge a connection between young diaspora Jews and Israel through sponsored trips to the country. The gathering included a minute of silence in remembrance of those killed in last week's terror attacks in Paris, who included Yoav Hatab, who had visited Israel on a Taglit birthright trip just 2 weeks before he was killed. During an address to the participants, Prime Minister Netanyahu called on them to consider making Israel their home.
I can tell you that every Jew in Israel can say, Ani Yehudi, je suis juif, je soy judeu, I'm a Jew. And we proclaim this without any fear, without any hesitation, with great pride. I'm a Jew. And this is what makes Israel unique. Because all Jews can feel they belong in Israel and that Israel belongs to them. So tonight I call on all of you, and I call on young Jews from the world over. Come to Israel, Beit Aliyah. This is your land. This is your birthright.
Anti-Semitic French comedian Dieudonné Mabala has done it again. He was arrested by police after posting a comment on his Facebook page appearing to demonstrate support for the terrorist gunman, Mehdi Coulibaly, who gunned down the 4 hostages in the Paris kosher supermarket before being killed by French security services. We hear more from Euronews.
Dieudonné Mbala has been detained by police. The controversial French comedian posted a comment on his Facebook page which appeared to back Mehdi Coulibaly, who gunned down 4 hostages in the Paris siege at a kosher supermarket last week. I'm finally going home. Know that this evening, as far as I'm concerned, I'm feeling Charlie Coulibaly, he wrote on Sunday, hours after millions had taken part in rallies throughout France. He later deleted the remark. The Paris prosecutor has launched an inquiry into whether the comedian was being an apologist for terrorism. What an insult to see a recidivist of hatred having his show in a theatre full of people, while at the same time on Saturday evening, Port de Vincennes, the whole country, was in mourning. We cannot just leave this. Justice must be served on this preacher of hatred. I say this emphatically here in the General Assembly. Dieudonné posted a further comment on his Facebook page responding to the criticism, saying he was only trying to make people laugh. The comic has a number of convictions for inciting anti-Semitism, and the courts banned several of his one-man shows last year. If found guilty this time, he could face up to 7 years in jail.
Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas is attending a meeting of the Arab League in Cairo today. He held talks with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in the city yesterday, where the two discussed the Palestinians' bid for recognition from the United Nations Security Council, including their demand that Israel withdraw to the pre-1967 lines. Palestinian chief negotiator Saeb Erekat announced that the PA has officially notified the UN that it will become a member of the International Criminal Court on the 1st of April, and that the first cases that the Palestinians intend to push forward are this past summer's Gaza conflict and Israel's building of the settlements. Turning to Argentina, where the country's president is being accused of orchestrating a cover-up in the investigation of the role that Iran played in the mass casualty terror attack at the Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires in 1994. State prosecutor Alberto Nisman, who is charged with investigating the 1994 blast that claimed 85 lives, is demanding that President Cristina Fernández Buenos be interrogated, along with Argentina's foreign minister, Héctor Timerman, for being accomplices in not only an aggravated cover-up, but obstruction of justice regarding the 5 Iranian and 1 Lebanese nationals suspected of carrying out that attack. According to Nisman, the two-term president has been pushing for the charges to be dropped so that Argentina can narrow its annual $7 billion energy gap by normalizing relations with Iran and exchanging grains from the South American country for Iranian oil. As the third deadline set to reach an international nuclear accord with Iran counts down, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry met with his counterpart from Tehran, Mohammad Javad Zarif. The talks were held in Geneva and reportedly focused on further efforts to narrow remaining differences over atomic development in the Islamic Republic. The second self-imposed deadline between Iran and 6 world nations passed in November 2014, and the new timeline calls for an accord by June 30th to gradually end sanctions against Iran in exchange for verifiable curbs on uranium enrichment to render it incapable of building nuclear weapons. Here at home, a new award was launched at the President's residence in Jerusalem today. It's called the Jerusalem Unity Prize, and it's being given in memory of the 3 Israeli teenagers who were abducted and murdered last summer. IBA's Aryeh O'Sullivan was there and brings us this report.
There are sometimes moments in a nation when horrible events turn into lofty experiences. One such event took place this past summer when Arab terrorists kidnapped 3 Jewish teenagers and brutally murdered them before dumping their bodies. But as tragic as it was, it sparked an outpouring of volunteering to find Eyal Yifrach, Gilad Shaul, and Naftali Frenkel, and then enormous collective grief at their funerals. It is this reflection of collective spirit, yearning and hope that the families of the slain youth hope to foster to commemorate their loss.
When we think about commemoration, we think about keeping the spirit of those days, the solidarity, the feeling of connection of the one big family. And we want to do anything that could promote connections between different parts of this people of the state and the connection with the diaspora. So this is very meaningful to us.
The prize will recognize 3 categories: an individual or organization fostering unity, a social initiative, and a project between Israel and the diaspora. Each will receive 100,000 shekels. Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat said the prize was a means for honoring the unity which is existential for the nation.
For us to promote the value of unity is way over and beyond just a prize. So the prize is the mean to promote and propose worthy people that are dealing with the issue of unity within the people of Israel.
Kobe Oz, the lead singer for the legendary Tipex band, is one of the judges, and he's hoping to award projects that foster diversity.
The people of Israel is being created now. It's not something from exile, it's something new. And the new stuff, we have to notice them, and we have to praise them. So a prize like this is a very good chance to notice the good things that are happening now in Israel.
The outpouring of volunteerism and then collective grief brought the country together last summer, and it's this unity, not the grief, that the prize hopes to commemorate. Recipients will be announced on a special Unity Day in June to mark the year anniversary of the deaths of the 3 teens. Aryeh O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Sports now, and the first Israeli coach in the NBA, David Blatt, is at the center of continuing drama. His team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, were hailed in the preseason as title contenders, but they're in a tailspin, losing 6 games in a row and dropping below 500 with a record of 19-20. His superstar player, LeBron James, came back from injury, but the team still lost. And then, following an offensive foul against James, Blatt got into a heated argument with a referee. James came over to the ref and shoved his coach out of the way. Some basketball analysts are now criticizing the player for disrespecting his coach, although both LeBron James and Blatt say that they were coming to the other's defense. In local
arguing a foul, and it looked like he shoved Blatt out of the way. Can you just take us through that? What happened there?
What was the call?
You got called for an offensive foul.
I got called for offensive foul, and they said I hooked one of the Morris twins on a post up when he grabbed me, and it was a referee that was away from the play, and I was talking to Eric Lewis, one of the other refs, and Coach Blatt was getting a little fired up about it too, and he was on his way to a technical, so I just got him up out of the way before he got a tee, so just protecting my coach.
Look, it's a physical game, and no disrespect to the officials. I just thought my guy was taking a lot of hard hits, and I didn't like it, and I was expressing my opinion. And LeBron stepped in to sort of protect me in that situation, which is more than fine. But what I really wanted to do was protect him.
In local finance on this last day of the trading week, the shekel gained strength against all major foreign currencies, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were down across the board. Here's a look at the afternoon numbers. The IBA weather team tells us to expect the rainy conditions to continue throughout most of the country over the next several days, along with more snow on Mount Hermon and the risk of flash flooding in the eastern Wadis. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. I'll be back tomorrow to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. Hope to see you then. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.